Savannah Reed was given 3 days to leave the only home she had left. Todd said it before the attorney had finished stacking Robert Reed's papers. "You're 18 now," he told her. "You understand how this works." Savannah sat at the end of the polished conference table with both hands in her lap. 4 days earlier, she'd had a birthday nobody remembered until dinner. 2 weeks earlier, her grandfather had died. Now his son was explaining adulthood to her, while reaching for the deed to Robert's house. The attorney's office was in a low stucco building near the county courthouse. The air conditioner rattled even though it was January. Someone had put a bowl of wrapped peppermints on the table. Jeffrey Reed had eaten 3 during the will reading and was turning a 4th between his fingers. Todd had received Reed freight lines, including the company name, its trucks, its equipment, and its current contracts. He also received the family house where Savannah had lived since her mother died. Holly received Robert's investment accounts. Jeffrey received one of the company trucks outright, a blue Kenworth he'd been asking Robert to sell him for years. Savannah received a brass key. The attorney, Miriam Lang, had read the sentence twice because nobody seemed sure they'd heard it properly. "To my granddaughter, Savannah Reed, I leave my brass freight key and all my personal claim to the old Benson Freight Depot on 4th Street with its remaining contents." Miriam looked up. "That is the full provision." Jeffrey stopped turning the peppermint. "That's it?" he asked. Holly gave him a warning look, but it came too late. Todd leaned back in his chair. "The depot?" "Yes," Miriam said. "The condemned one? It has not officially been condemned. It should have been." Miriam folded her hands over the will. She had represented Robert on ordinary business matters, but she hadn't prepared every paper he'd ever signed. She knew the building on 4th Street existed. She knew it had once served as the operating base for Reed Freight Lines. She did not know why Robert had chosen to mention it separately. Holly turned toward Savannah with a careful expression. "Well, your grandfather knew you were sentimental about that place." Savannah looked at the key lying on the table. It was longer than a house key with a round bow and a narrow stem darkened around the edges. A paper tag had been tied to it with white string. Someone had written "Depot Front" in blue ink. She knew the key. It had hung on a hook beside Robert's desk for as long as she could remember. He used to carry it when he went down to check the old building after storms. Sometimes Savannah went with him. She remembered dust floating in the waiting room, pigeons moving on the roof, and Robert testing doors with one shoulder pressed against the wood. The depot hadn't been useful in years. The roof leaked over the old ticket counter. Half the loading platform had gone soft. The electrical service worked when it felt like it, and the plumbing made sounds nobody trusted. Robert had kept it anyway. Savannah reached for the key. It was cold against her palm. Jeffrey unwrapped the peppermint. "What about the taxes?" Todd looked at him. "What?" Jeffrey said. "Grandpa said they were behind." "He said a lot of things," Todd replied. Miriam opened a separate folder. "The county statement I received shows approximately $6,400 in unpaid property taxes and fees connected to the depot address." Holly lowered her eyes as if the number had caused her personal pain. "Oh, Savannah." The concern in her voice sounded almost real. Holly had practiced that tone for years. She used it when offering something Savannah hadn't asked for, or when explaining why a family decision had already been made without her. Savannah closed her fingers around the key. "Did Grandpa know?" she asked. "I'm sure he did," Todd said. She looked at Miriam. "Did he know?" "The statement predates his death," Miriam said. "So, yes, I believe he knew there was a balance." Todd gave a short laugh. "Of course he knew. Nobody joined him at first." Then Jeffrey smiled down at the table. Savannah heard what they were all thinking. Robert had left the house, the company, the money, and the working truck to everyone else. He had left her a broken building with a tax bill attached. She tried to picture him doing that on purpose. Robert had been stubborn, but he wasn't careless. He kept fuel receipts in envelopes marked by month. He could remember which truck needed a belt replaced by the sound it made crossing the yard. When Savannah once lost $40 from the petty cash drawer, he didn't shout. He helped her empty every wastebasket in the office until they found the bills stuck beneath a coffee filter. He didn't lose track of things. That was the part she couldn't make fit. Todd pushed his chair back. "We need to talk about the house." Miriam glanced toward him. "The estate documents still require processing." "I know. I mean, practically." He faced Savannah. The conference room suddenly felt smaller. "Holly and I are moving in," he said. "We need to go through Dad's office, the garage, everything. There are company records all over that house. I'm still living there, for the moment. Savannah stared at him. She had expected the house to go to Todd. She hadn't expected him to take possession before Robert's clothes were out of the bedroom. Holly placed one hand on the table. Nobody is throwing you into the street. Todd looked at her, then back at Savannah. 3 days should be enough. Miriam's expression changed. Mr. Reed, residential occupancy is separate from the estate distribution. She's family. This isn't an eviction. That was how Todd preferred things. If he didn't use the word, he could pretend the thing itself wasn't happening. Savannah asked, "Where am I supposed to go?" Todd rubbed a thumb along his jaw. He had spent most of the reading looking impatient. Now he seemed offended that she'd asked him to finish his own thought. "You have your car." Jeffrey stopped chewing. Holly turned sharply. "Todd." "What?" "I'm saying she has transportation." "That's not a place to live," Savannah said. "No one said it was." "You just did." "I said you're not trapped." "Don't twist my words." Miriam took off her glasses. "Savannah, if you need information about local housing assistance, I can have my assistant gather it." Holly moved closer to Savannah's chair. "You could stay with my sister in Tucson for a little while. I've met your sister twice. She has a spare room. Did you ask her?" Holly's mouth tightened. "No, not yet." Todd gathered the company papers into a neat pile. "This doesn't need to turn into a scene. Dad's gone. The business has to keep moving. We all have to adjust." Savannah looked at the key in her hand. "What about the depot? What about it? If Grandpa left it to me, I can stay there." Jeffrey laughed before he could stop himself. Holly said his name quietly. He lifted both hands. "Sorry, I just pictured it." Savannah looked at him. Jeffrey had received a working truck worth more than anything she had ever owned. He had a rented house across town and a job waiting at the company. Still, he watched her with the nervous amusement of someone who needed to believe the division had been fair. Todd shook his head. "You can't live in that place. You just said I had to leave. I said you have 3 days. That gives you time to make a reasonable plan. The depot has rooms, it has rats, it has a bathroom, it has pipes. That's not the same thing." Holly touched Savannah's sleeve. Savannah moved her arm away. "Listen," Holly said, "your grandfather loved you. Nobody is saying he didn't. But toward the end, he held on to things because he couldn't bear to let them go. That building was one of those things." Savannah studied her face. "Then why leave it to me?" Holly had no answer ready. Todd did. "Because you followed him around there. He thought you'd want the memory, with $6,400 owed on it. Maybe he thought you'd sell the scrap." Miriam slid the key's receipt form across the table. Savannah signed it. Her handwriting looked unsteady, so she wrote more slowly. She printed her full name beneath the signature and dated the page. When she finished, Miriam handed her the key. Todd stood. 3 days, he said. By Friday evening. Savannah tucked the key into the front pocket of her jeans. Nobody at the table believed she'd keep the depot. Todd expected the county to take it for taxes. Holly expected Savannah to abandon it once she saw how bad it had become. Jeffrey thought she might sell it to someone who wanted old lumber or a cheap piece of land. Savannah didn't know what she expected. She only knew Robert had chosen that key. For most of her life, Robert had been the person who came when other people changed their minds. After Brianna Reed died, Savannah moved between relatives who meant well for a few weeks at a time. One spare room had boxes stacked against the wall. Another had a sofa bed that folded shut if she turned over too hard. People told her she was welcome, then lowered their voices in kitchens when bills arrived. Robert ended that. He brought her to his house in Benson and cleared the smaller bedroom beside the laundry room. He put a lamp on the nightstand and left 2 empty drawers in the dresser. There was no speech about fresh starts. He made eggs the next morning, handed her a clean shop towel when she spilled juice, and took her to the freight yard because he had work to do. That became their life. Robert woke early. Savannah learned to sleep through the sound of the coffee grinder. He drove to read freight lines before the heat settled over Benson, and she often spent the day at the depot yard during school breaks and weekends. The old station stood at the back of the property, beyond the newer metal office and truck bays. Its pale brick walls had turned the color of desert dust. The freight platform ran along the trackside, with warped boards and rusted iron brackets. The passenger waiting room still had wooden benches bolted to the floor, though no passenger train had stopped there in decades. Robert treated the depot like an old employee who could no longer lift much but still deserved a chair. He swept it. He patched windows. He kept the front door locked. He never explained why. By the time Savannah was old enough to ask useful questions, Todd was running more of the company. He preferred the newer office. He wanted clean desks, online invoices, and trucks that carried the same logo on every door. The depot embarrassed him. Holly disliked it for different reasons. The building was dusty, inconvenient, and impossible to make presentable for company events. She once suggested renting a machine and knocking it flat. Robert didn't argue. He just looked at her until she changed the subject. Savannah remembered that now. 3 days after the will reading, she stood in her bedroom with 2 cardboard boxes and a black trash bag spread open on the floor. Todd had arrived that morning with a locksmith. He hadn't changed the locks yet. He wanted Savannah to see that he could. The house no longer sounded like Robert's house. Holly had opened every curtain. Cabinet doors banged in the kitchen. Jeffrey carried company files from the den to his truck. Todd moved through the hallway with a yellow legal pad, writing down furniture he planned to keep. Savannah packed clothes first, then her phone charger, work shoes, 2 towels, and the framed photograph of Brianna that had been beside her bed. There wasn't much else she could claim without starting an argument. Her car was an old gray Toyota Corolla Robert had helped her buy with money from weekend work. The air conditioner failed whenever she stopped at a light. The trunk only opened if she held the key, turned while pressing down on the lid. She carried the first box outside. Jeffrey was beside his blue Kenworth, wiping dust from the door with his sleeve. "Need help?" he asked. Savannah looked at the truck. Robert had replaced its transmission less than a year earlier. "No." Jeffrey nodded as though she'd spared him a burden. She loaded the box into the Corolla. When she returned, Holly was standing in the bedroom doorway, holding a set of blue sheets. "You can take these," she said. "They were already mine." "I know. I'm saying take them." Savannah pulled the trash bag closed. Holly watched her. "You don't have to make this harder than it is." Savannah almost asked what the easier version looked like. Instead, she lifted the second box. Holly stepped aside. Downstairs, Todd was opening Robert's desk drawers. Savannah stopped in the den. "That's Grandpa's. It's mine now. I mean, the things inside. Company things." "Some of it isn't." Todd closed the drawer harder than necessary. "If I find anything personal that belongs to you, I'll set it aside." Savannah knew what that meant. He would decide what counted as hers. She put the box down and looked at the wall behind the desk. A clean rectangle showed where Robert's freight map had hung. Todd had already taken it. "Did you find anything about the depot?" His shoulders shifted. "No." "Any bills, papers, anything with the key?" I said no. She didn't believe him. Todd could tell. He leaned both hands on the desk. "Savannah, that building is not a gift. You need to understand that before you spend money you don't have. The taxes alone will bury you. Then why do you care what I do with it? I don't." He answered too quickly, but that didn't mean he knew something. Todd was in debt, under pressure, and newly responsible for a company Robert had kept alive through lean years. He cared about anything that might become another expense. Savannah picked up the box. At the front door, Holly offered her the blue sheets again. Savannah took them because night in the desert got cold, and pride wasn't useful once the sun went down. Nobody hugged her. Todd followed her onto the porch. "You'll let us know where you end up?" She placed the sheets on the passenger seat. "You know where." His eyes went to the brass key hanging from her finger. "Don't be foolish. You gave me 3 days. I didn't tell you to move into a ruin. You didn't tell me anywhere else." Todd looked toward the street. Their neighbor was watering a row of clay pots and trying not to watch. "I can give you money for a motel," he said quietly. "For how long?" "A few nights." And then? He had no answer. Savannah got into the Corolla. Todd rested one hand on the roof. "If the county posts the place, you leave. Don't fight people who are trying to keep you safe." She started the engine. As she pulled away, she saw Holly standing behind the screen door. Jeffrey had gone back to polishing his truck. The old Benson Freight Depot was less than 10 minutes away. Savannah drove past the pharmacy, the post office, and a tire shop with faded red flags along its fence. 4th Street ran toward the tracks, where old industrial lots sat behind chain link and brittle weeds. The Reed Freight Line's yard occupied the western end of the block. Its newer office was locked. Several company trailers stood in rows beneath the afternoon sun. The depot sat beyond them. Savannah stopped at the edge of the property. For a moment, she understood why Jeffrey had laughed. A section of roofing felt hung loose above the waiting room. One gutter had separated from the wall and pointed at the ground. The freight platform sagged near its eastern end. Plywood covered 2 windows, and a mesquite branch scraped the brick whenever the wind moved. She could see 3 broken panes from the car. The place looked worse than she remembered. Savannah parked beside the platform and turned off the engine. Without the car running, the silence was immediate. Wind moved through dry grass along the siding. Somewhere inside the depot, metal knocked at an uneven rhythm. She stayed in the driver's seat. She had enough money for several motel nights if she spent almost nothing on food. After that, she would need steady work, a room, and a deposit she didn't have. The depot might not have water, it might not have safe power, it might not even have a door that closed. Still, nobody could tell her she had 3 days there. Savannah took the brass key and walked to the front entrance. The lock was hidden beneath dust. She wiped it with her thumb, inserted the key, and tried to turn it. Nothing happened. She pulled it out, checked the teeth, and tried again. The key stopped halfway. "Come on," she whispered. Wind pushed grit across the concrete behind her. She pressed one shoulder against the door, lifted the handle, and turned the key at the same time. The lock moved. Something heavy fell inside with a crash. Savannah jumped back, but the door had opened an inch. A strip of darkness showed beyond it. She pushed harder. A broken ceiling tile scraped across the floor. The gap widened enough for her to step through. The waiting room smelled of dust, damp wood, and old paper. Sunlight entered through the broken panes and narrow white bars. Pigeon feathers lay beneath the rafters. The benches were still bolted down. The ticket counter leaned slightly toward the room. Its paint blistered and gray. Water dripped into a metal bucket near the far wall. Someone had placed that bucket there. Savannah stood still. Robert must have done it before he died. The thought made the empty room feel occupied for one brief second. She crossed to the nearest light switch and flipped it. Nothing. She tried the next one. A bulb above the ticket counter flickered, went dark, then returned with a weak yellow glow. Savannah looked up at it. The electricity worked. Not well, but it worked. She walked through every room before bringing anything inside. The office had a cracked window and a dead mouse beneath the desk. The bathroom faucet coughed rust-colored water, then ran clear enough to wash with. A narrow storage room near the back had no broken glass and a door that latched. The roof leaked in 4 places she could find. The back door had been nailed shut. The freight platform groaned under her weight, so she stayed close to the brick wall. When she returned to the waiting room, the yellow bulb was still on. Savannah carried in her boxes. She swept one corner with an old push broom she found beside the bathroom. She laid the blue sheets over a wooden bench, folded a towel beneath her head, and kept her shoes on. The building settled around her as evening came. She could hear trucks on the highway and freight cars moving somewhere beyond town. Every few minutes, the loose metal outside knocked again. Savannah held the brass key against her chest. She still believed Robert had left her a wreck. She still believed Todd had taken everything that could keep a person safe. Yet her grandfather had guarded this place long after it stopped making sense to anyone else. Before sleeping, she looked across the waiting room at the old ticket counter. The weak bulb above it flickered once. Savannah watched until it steadied. Then she placed the key beneath her folded towel, close enough to touch in the dark. By sunrise, the towel beneath Savannah's head had slipped onto the floor. She woke with one hand under it, and the brass key pressed into her palm. For several seconds, she didn't know where she was. Then a pigeon shuffled in the rafters, and cold air moved across her face from the cracked office window. The yellow bulb above the ticket counter was still burning. Savannah sat up. Her shoulders hurt from the bench. The building looked less frightening in daylight, though not much cleaner. She checked her phone. Holly had sent a message shortly after midnight. "Please tell us you found somewhere safe." Savannah read it twice. She could have replied with a photograph of the broken windows. She could have told Holly exactly where she was and waited to see whether concern became action. Instead, she wrote, "I'm at the depot. The door's locked. I'm safe." Holly's reply came before Savannah had put on her jacket. "That isn't what I meant." Savannah turned the phone face down. She found a dented electric kettle in the office cabinet, but the cord had been cut. Breakfast was crackers and warm water from a bottle in her car. She ate on the freight platform while the sun cleared the low buildings across the tracks. During the night, she had treated the depot like shelter. By morning, that no longer seemed enough. If she was going to stay, even briefly, she needed one dry room, one safe electrical outlet, and a door nobody else could open. She needed to know whether the tax balance meant the county could remove her next week or next year. She needed facts that didn't come from Todd. Savannah went back inside and found a legal pad in the bottom drawer of the old office desk. Most of its pages had curled from damp. She tore off the ruined ones and wrote 4 words at the top of a clean page: roof, power, taxes, locks. It wasn't a plan for her life. It was a plan for that day. The loose metal outside knocked again. She followed the sound to the eastern end of the building. A length of gutter had twisted against an old sign bracket. Each gust lifted it and dropped it against the brick. Savannah found a ladder lying beneath the platform, but one rung had split. She was dragging it into the yard when a diesel engine slowed beyond the fence. A white flatbed truck came through the side gate, pulling an empty equipment trailer. The truck had Barnett Hauling painted on the door in dark green letters. Sean Barnett parked beside the newer loading bays and climbed out. He wore work boots, a faded canvas jacket, and a cap with a welding supply company's name across the front. He looked toward the depot, then at Savannah holding the damaged ladder. "What are you doing?" "Moving a ladder. I can see that." He shut the truck door and crossed the yard. Sean had worked Robert's loading dock for more than 20 years before starting his own hauling business. He still used the depot yard to assemble loads when he needed more turning room than his own property allowed. Robert had never charged him much. Sean returned the favor by fixing gates, clearing weeds, and noticing problems before they became expensive. Savannah knew him well enough to recognize when he was angry. He became quieter. "You slept here," he said. It wasn't a question. "How did you know?" "Your car. Those sheets in the window. Pick one. The doors lock. That front door can be opened with a shoulder. It took me a shoulder and the key." Sean looked at the ladder. Roof, gutter. "You're not climbing that. I wasn't planning to use the broken rung. That's not the comforting answer you think it is." He walked around the corner and studied the hanging gutter. Then he took his phone from his pocket. "I've got a delivery in Wilcox at 10. After that, I'll come back with a decent ladder and some sheet metal screws." "You don't have to. I know. I can pay you later." "No." Savannah stiffened. Sean noticed. "I mean, I'm not charging you. This place lets me stage oversized loads. If the gutter tears loose, it can take part of the roof edge with it. That becomes my problem, too." That made accepting his help easier. "Do you have a tarp?" she asked. "Several." "The roof leaks." "It's a roof in Arizona. Most people don't find out theirs leaks until the exact day tarps sell out." He glanced through the open depot door. "Did Todd put you here?" "He put me out of the house." Sean's jaw shifted. "He said I had 3 days." "When?" "After the will reading." "And Robert left you this?" Savannah held up the brass key. Sean looked at it without smiling. "That old thing, you know it? Robert carried it before you were born. Used to hang it from his belt when the dock was busy. He left me the key and his claim to the depot." "What did Todd get?" "The company and the house. Holly, the accounts." "Jeffrey got the Kenworth, didn't he?" Savannah nodded. Sean looked toward the blue truck parked behind the company fence. He didn't need to say what he thought of the division. "What did they tell you about this property?" he asked. "That it's a money pit. The county statement says about $6,400 is owed." Sean's attention returned to her. "What statement?" "The one at the attorney's office." "Did you see the date?" "No. Did you see the parcel number?" Savannah lowered the key. "Why?" "Because I made a payment on the depot account in December." She thought she had misunderstood. "You paid its taxes?" "A payment, not all of them." "Why would you do that?" Sean put his phone back in his pocket. "Because the county had it on a delinquency schedule. As long as regular amounts went in, they weren't moving it toward sale. Robert and I had an arrangement." "What arrangement?" "I used the yard. I carried the insurance on the building and kept the tax account breathing." "How long?" "Long enough? That's not a number. 1 year for the insurance. Tax payments here and there before that." Savannah stared at him. "Grandpa never told me. He didn't tell most people. Did Todd know?" Sean looked toward the newer office. "Robert told me he didn't." That was the first thing Savannah had heard since the will reading that didn't match the family's version. They had spoken about the depot, as if Robert had forgotten it. Sean was describing regular insurance, tax payments, and an agreement kept outside company records. Why didn't Grandpa pay it himself? He did, until business got tight. Then he tried to stop me from helping. I told him I wasn't helping. I was paying for the use of the yard. And after he died, I kept paying. Nobody told me who owned the place. Savannah thought about the statement on Miriam's table. $6,400 sounded final when Holly repeated it. It sounded like a weight tied to the key. Now it sounded incomplete. Do you have receipts? At my office? All of them? Probably. My bookkeeper doesn't let me throw away a fuel receipt from 3 years ago. She's not going to lose property payments. I need copies. Sean watched her for a moment. You going to challenge the estate? I don't know. That can get expensive. I said, I don't know. I want to find out what I actually have. Sean nodded once. That part's free. He walked back to his truck, then stopped. Don't touch the breaker panel until I get back. The west side outlets used to arc when it rained. Which side is west? Sean pointed. Savannah looked at the wall beside her. Right. And don't climb anything. I heard you. I know. I'm repeating it because you're Robert's granddaughter. He drove out with the empty trailer rattling behind him. Savannah stood in the yard until the truck turned off 4th Street. Then she added receipts beneath taxes on her list. She spent the next 2 hours carrying debris out of the waiting room. Broken ceiling tiles went into heavy trash bags. Damp papers went into a box until she could decide whether they mattered. She found a broom with half its bristles missing, a dustpan, 3 rusted coffee cans, and a wooden sign that read, Freight Office. She wiped the sign clean and set it against the ticket counter. Around noon, she drove to the county administration building. The property tax counter stood beneath bright fluorescent lights in a room that smelled faintly of copier toner. A clerk named Dana Pierce listened, while Savannah explained that she had been left a property, or at least a claim to one, and needed to understand the balance. Dana was a broad-shouldered woman with silver glasses on a chain. She didn't react when Savannah admitted she wasn't sure what documents she had. That happens more than you'd think, Dana said. Address? Savannah gave it to her. Dana entered the information, frowned at the screen, and tried a second search. Do you know the owner name listed on the statement? Robert Reed. That's not what I'm seeing. Savannah leaned forward. What are you seeing? Dana turned the monitor slightly away. Not enough for Savannah to read it. I can't release account details without proof of authority. Bring the will provision, your identification, and any deed paperwork you received. I didn't receive a deed. Then bring what you did receive. Can you at least tell me if it's going to tax sale? Dana studied the screen. There is a delinquent balance of approximately $6,400. There's also an active payment arrangement. The most recent payment posted last month. From Sean Barnett? I can't give you the payer's information. But someone paid it. Yes. So Todd knew that? I can't tell you what another person knew. Savannah tried again. Is the county taking the building? Not while this arrangement remains current. That could change if payments stop or if other enforcement issues arise. What kind of enforcement issues? Building safety, access, nuisance complaints. Those would go through code enforcement, not this desk. Holly's message came back to Savannah. That isn't what I meant. Savannah hadn't thought of the depot as something another person could report. Now she did. Can I get something in writing saying the payment arrangement is active, with proof you're authorized? I'll come back. Dana wrote a short list on a county envelope. Bring everything. Old paperwork, too. Ownership records around the rail properties are sometimes strange. Why? Parcels were divided, leased, combined, and renamed. That whole corridor has old descriptions. Savannah took the envelope. Can I ask one more thing? You can ask. If the owner isn't Robert Reed, does that mean he couldn't leave it to me? Dana gave her the honest answer, which wasn't the comforting one. It means you need to find out what he owned. Sean returned shortly after 3 with a ladder strapped to his flatbed, 2 blue tarps, a toolbox, and a paper sack from a sandwich shop. I brought turkey, he said. If you hate turkey, today you don't. Savannah took the sandwich. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until she smelled the toasted bread. They ate on the platform with their feet on the gravel. Sean listened while she explained what the clerk had said. Owner name could be a company, he said. Reed Freight Lines? Maybe. Robert had different names on different things. He hated putting all his eggs in one basket. That sounds like him. He also forgot which basket he used. He didn't forget this place. Sean glanced at her. No, he didn't. They started with the gutter. Sean climbed while Savannah steadied the ladder and handed up screws. He secured the loose section, then crossed to the lower roof above the waiting room. The damage was worse around an old vent where dried sealant had split. He spread a tarp over it and anchored the corners with boards. "This won't survive a hard storm," he said. "It gives us time. Us." Savannah noticed the word but didn't point it out. Inside, Sean opened the breaker panel and tested the circuits one by one. 2 were dead. 1 made his meter jump in a way he didn't like. He switched those off and marked them with red tape. "You can use the office outlet and the one behind the counter. Nothing else until an electrician looks. I can't afford an electrician. I know one who still owes me for moving a broken skid steer. That sounds expensive." It was annoying. Annoying debts are easier to collect. They checked the plumbing next. A shutoff valve beneath the bathroom sink leaked around its stem. Sean tightened the packing nut and left a bucket under it. By late afternoon, the depot had 1 dry corner, 1 safe outlet, running water, and a front door reinforced with a steel plate Sean found in his truck. Savannah crossed roof, power, and locks off her list. Taxes stayed. She was sweeping behind the ticket counter when the broom handle struck the wall. The sound was hollow. She stopped. Most of the depot's interior walls were plaster over brick. When the broom hit them, they answered with a flat, solid knock. This section gave a light wooden echo. Savannah tapped it again. Sean was packing his tools in the waiting room. "What?" he asked. "This wall sounds different. It's paneling. It looks like plaster." He came behind the counter and knocked with his knuckles. "Huh." Savannah looked along the baseboard. The trim changed near the corner. One piece was narrower, and its paint was a slightly darker gray. She stepped back. The old ticket office was small. She remembered it being small even when Robert used it for storage. But the outside wall of the building sat several feet beyond the interior wall. "There should be more room here," she said. "Could be a service chase." "For what?" "Pipes. Wiring. There's no plumbing on this side." Sean took a tape measure from his belt. They measured from the office window to the corner, then went outside and measured the same stretch of brick. The difference was nearly 4 feet. Sean measured again. Savannah watched his face. "What is it?" "I don't know." "Was it like this when you worked here?" "The counter was here. I never had a reason to measure the room." Savannah crouched near the mismatched baseboard. Beneath the paint, she found the outline of 2 screw heads. Someone had covered them with filler, but not well enough to erase them. She scraped one with the edge of the brass key. A thin circle of metal appeared. Sean said, "If we open that, we may tear up the whole panel." Savannah looked at the gray wall. That morning, she had needed a dry place to sleep. By afternoon, she knew someone had kept the property taxes current. The owner's name wasn't Roberts, and 4 feet of the depot had been deliberately closed away behind the ticket counter. She put the key back in her pocket. "Not tonight," she said. "Tomorrow, we bring the right tools." Sean arrived the next morning with a pry bar, a cordless drill, and an electrician named Curtis Bell. Curtis was already annoyed when he stepped out of his van. "You told me 1 bad outlet." "I said at least 1, Sean replied. "That's not the same sentence. It got you here." Curtis looked at the depot. "You moved a skid steer, Sean. You didn't donate me a kidney." Savannah met them at the front door. She had used the safe outlet to charge her phone and heat water in a kettle borrowed from a convenience store clerk she knew. The waiting room smelled faintly of instant coffee. Curtis looked past her at the ceiling. "You staying in here?" "For now." "Then show me every place water comes in." He spent half an hour testing the breaker panel and tracing wires. The office circuit was newer than the rest. Someone had replaced it within the last several years. The waiting room light was older, but safe if Savannah didn't add anything to the line. Curtis disconnected 2 damaged circuits completely. "I can give you 1 more outlet near the bathroom," he said. "Nothing fancy. Grounded box, surface conduit. How much?" He looked at Sean. Sean said, "Be reasonable. I am reasonable. That's why people hate calling me." Curtis named an amount Savannah could pay without losing her food money. She agreed. While he worked, she and Sean went behind the ticket counter. The screw heads appeared after they scraped away more filler. There were 6 of them, spaced along a seam that someone had tried to hide beneath paint. Sean ran a utility knife along the edge. "Panel's probably going to crack. Can we save it? Maybe. Let's try." They removed the baseboard first. 2 nails bent, but the wood stayed whole. Behind it, Savannah saw a narrow line of unfinished plywood. Sean looked at her. "That's not original. How old?" "Hard to say." He backed out the screws one at a time. The top corner loosened after the 4th. A dark gap opened between the panel and the wall. Savannah brought over a flashlight. Sean pulled gently while she aimed the beam inside. Something reflected near the floor. Before they could move the panel farther, a car stopped outside. Savannah heard the driver's door close. A woman called from the waiting room. "Savannah?" Sean let the panel settle back into place. Savannah recognized the voice, though she hadn't heard it in months. Olivia Chavez stood beside the ticket counter with a cloth grocery bag over one arm. Her gray hair was cut short around her face, and she wore a denim shirt buttoned neatly at the wrists. She had kept Robert's books for 30 years. Even after retiring, she still corrected people when they called the freight office during tax season. Her eyes went from Savannah to Sean, then to the drill on the floor. "So it's true," she said. "What did you hear?" Savannah asked. "That Todd made you leave, that you moved in here, that Sean is letting you tear into walls before breakfast." Sean came out from behind the counter. "It's after 9. Olivia ignored him. She placed the grocery bag on a bench. Inside were 2 containers of soup, bread, paper towels, batteries, and a small first aid kit. "You didn't have to bring all this," Savannah said. "I know. That seems to be everyone's favorite sentence this week." Sean looked at the soup. "Did you bring enough?" "No." He nodded. "Fair." Olivia touched Savannah's cheek with the back of 2 fingers. It was a familiar gesture, quick and practical. She had done it years ago whenever Savannah looked feverish at the freight office. "You look tired. I slept better last night." "That's not what I said." Savannah carried the bag to the office. When she returned, Olivia was studying the ticket counter. "What are you doing to Robert's wall?" "It isn't where it should be." Olivia's expression sharpened. Savannah explained the measurements, the hidden screws, and the gap behind the panel. She also told her what the county clerk had said about the owner name. Olivia listened without interrupting. When Savannah finished, Olivia pulled out one of the wooden benches and sat. "Did Todd give you any of the old depot files?" "No. Did Miriam?" "She said the will only included the key and Grandpa's claim to the building, his personal claim. That was the wording." Olivia looked toward the front windows. Robert chose words carefully when he wanted to. "Did he own this place?" "He always said he did. That's not what the county screen shows." "No, it probably wouldn't be." Savannah waited. Olivia had spent decades giving Robert time to finish his thoughts. She expected the same patience from other people. Savannah didn't have it that morning. "What does that mean?" "It means the depot was never simple. Nothing anyone says about it is simple. Todd says it's worthless. The county says it's under another name. Sean says Grandpa kept paying to protect it. What do you know?" Olivia glanced at Sean. He leaned against the counter and folded his arms. "Tell her," he said. "I came to." "Then tell me," Savannah said. Olivia's face softened, but she didn't avoid the question. "The depot was supposed to go to your mother." Savannah sat on the bench across from her. "When?" "Long before Brianna died. Robert told me more than once that the house would go to Todd and the depot would go to her. Why? Because Todd wanted the freight company. Brianna wanted this place." Savannah looked around the waiting room. Her mother had appeared in many of Savannah's depot memories, but never clearly. A laugh from the office, red fingernails tapping a vending machine button, a pair of sunglasses left on Robert's desk. What did she want to do with it? She changed her mind every few years. Once it was a produce market, then a workshop. For a while, she wanted to restore the waiting room and rent the office spaces. Robert listened to all of it. Did Todd know? He knew Brianna loved the building. I don't think he knew Robert intended to separate it from the company. How could he not know? Because Robert didn't trust him with that information. Sean lowered his eyes. Savannah felt the words land slowly. Todd had spent years presenting himself as Robert's practical son, the person who understood the business. At the will reading, he had acted as though the depot was a sentimental mistake. "Why didn't Grandpa tell me?" "You weren't 18. That didn't stop him from talking to me. It stopped him from putting control in your hands." Savannah's voice tightened. "I'm not a child. No, but before your birthday, other people could claim they were acting for your benefit. Robert worried someone would pressure you to sign away whatever he left." "Someone meaning Todd?" Olivia pressed her lips together. Robert didn't name only one person. The answer widened the hurt rather than settling it. Savannah stood and walked to the front window. Sean stayed quiet. Curtis drilled into the wall near the bathroom, and the ordinary sound gave them all somewhere else to look. "When did Grandpa tell you this?" Savannah asked. The first time was after Brianna died. The last time was shortly before I retired. That was years ago. Yes. He could have changed his mind. He could have. Maybe he did. Olivia shook her head. The year before he died, he called me about an old file. He wanted to know whether I still had my closing records from the depot. What closing records? Papers from a transaction Robert handled before Reed Freight Lines existed. Savannah turned. What transaction? I don't know the full answer anymore. It was a long time ago, and the records weren't part of the company books. Robert kept that line very clear. But you had copies. I had copies of nearly everything I witnessed or entered. When I retired, some boxes came home with me. Others went into storage. Can you find them? I can try. Why didn't you bring them? Because I learned you were here yesterday evening. Also, I'm not sure which box they're in, Sean asked. Did Robert say why he wanted them? He said Savannah was getting close to the age he'd been waiting for. Savannah looked back at the hidden panel. Olivia followed her eyes. He also said she would need to find part of it herself. Part of what? Savannah asked. He didn't say. That sounds like one of his puzzles. No? Robert liked a puzzle when the answer didn't matter. Now this mattered. Savannah returned to the bench. What exactly did he tell you? Olivia thought carefully. He said, keep your copy until she has the key. Nobody gets to make the choice for her before then. Your copy of what? I believe it was a property file. I won't swear to more until I see it. You said he kept something sealed. He said the main papers were sealed where Todd wouldn't find them during a company search. Here? I assume so. Sean looked toward the platform side of the building. Olivia noticed. What? Nothing yet, he said. She pointed at him. Don't do that. Robert did that, and it drove me crazy. We found a space behind the wall. You set a gap. It's nearly 4 feet deep. Olivia stood. Open it. Sean looked at Savannah. She nodded. Curtis paused in the bathroom doorway. Am I about to regret being here? Probably, Sean said. They removed the last screws. Sean worked the pry bar gently beneath the panel while Savannah held its weight. The upper edge came free with a dry, cracking sound. Dust rolled out. Behind the panel was a shallow service space framed with old lumber. It wasn't large enough to stand inside. Cloth-covered wires ran down one side, disconnected and capped. Near the floor sat a rusted metal box with a curved lid. Sean reached in and dragged it forward. The box left 2 clean lines through the dust. Olivia crouched beside it. I remember this. You've seen it? Savannah asked. Not here. Robert used to keep shipping stamps in one like it. A small padlock held the latch. Its body was orange with rust. Savannah tried the brass key. It didn't fit. Sean picked up the pry bar. Wait, she said. He stopped. The lock was old, but the box had remained dry behind the wall. Savannah brushed dirt from the lid. Faint white letters appeared under her hand. R. Reed, Private. Sean tried lubricant first. Then he worked the lock with a narrow pick from his toolbox. After several minutes, the shackle lifted. Nobody spoke as Savannah opened the lid. Inside was an oilcloth bundle tied with cotton string. She lifted it onto the counter and unfolded the cloth. There was no stack of money, no deed, no complete explanation. The first item was a black and white photograph. Robert stood beside a sold sign planted in the dirt near the depot tracks. He looked much younger, with thick dark hair and work gloves tucked into his back pocket. On the white border, someone had written 1979. Savannah held it closer. What was sold? She asked. Olivia took the photograph. The railroad was disposing of old branch property around then. To Grandpa? I don't remember seeing this picture. Beneath it lay a folded ledger page torn down one side. The paper had yellowed, and several lines were missing. Robert's handwriting filled the remaining columns: deposit, survey, notary. The final entry included a parcel description, but the beginning had been torn away. It mentioned the depot structure, the freight platform, and acreage extending along the siding. Sean read over Savannah's shoulder. That's more land than Todd uses. Does it say Robert bought it? She asked. Not on this part. Olivia traced one line without touching the ink. This isn't from the company ledger. Reed Freight Lines didn't exist yet. The last item was a narrow strip of paper folded into quarters. It looked like the lower portion of a longer note. Savannah opened it. Only 3 handwritten lines remained. If the office copy is missing, use the vault under the platform. The deed and reserve stay together. Do not open for Todd. The rest had been torn away. Sean read it twice. Olivia sat down on the bench behind her. Savannah looked from the paper to the platform door. There's no vault under the platform. Sean took the flashlight from the counter. There used to be a cold storage cellar. Where? East End. They bricked it over during a safety renovation. Can we get into it? Not through any door I've seen. Savannah folded the note along its old creases. Outside, Sean walked the length of the loading platform, stopping at each patched section of brick. Savannah followed with the photograph in one hand. Near the eastern stairs, he crouched and cleared away a drift of dirt. Behind it, a row of bricks didn't match the foundation. Sean pressed his palm against the mortar. This was filled later. Savannah knelt beside him. How much later? I don't know. Before my time. Olivia remained above them on the platform. She had the torn ledger page protected between both hands. The safety renovation was in 1985, she said. Robert complained about that bill for years. Sean tapped the bricks with the handle of his flashlight. The sound behind them was deep and empty. Savannah took out her phone and photographed the wall, the ledger page, the note, and the picture of Robert beside the sold sign. Then she placed the originals back inside the oilcloth. We don't tell Todd, she said. Olivia looked at her carefully. Not until we know what this is. Sean stood and brushed dirt from his knees. Opening that wall won't be like moving a panel. We need to know what's holding up the platform, then we find out. Savannah touched one of the mismatched bricks. A small piece of mortar came loose beneath her thumb. Cold air moved through the crack. Sean held the flashlight close to the opening. That's a real airspace, he said. Savannah put her eye near the crack. She saw nothing but black. Could the floor collapse? Not from one loose piece of mortar. We're not removing anything else until I check. He went to his truck and returned with a long masonry bit. Olivia watched him fit it into the drill. You just said we weren't removing anything, she said. I'm making a hole the width of my finger. That's how men explain damage before it happens. Sean marked a spot near the center of one brick. If this is only an infill wall, there should be open space behind it. If it's packed with dirt, we stop. The drill whined against the brick. Red dust fell onto the ground. After several inches, the resistance disappeared. Sean released the trigger. That went through. He widened the hole enough to feed in a small inspection camera connected to his phone. The image on the screen was grainy and green. Savannah could make out a concrete floor, part of an old shelf, and a wall on the opposite side. The ceiling looked intact. A thick timber crossed above the bricked opening. Sean moved the camera slowly. Something pale darted through the frame. Olivia stepped back. Was that alive? Spider, Sean said. You don't know that. It had legs. That does not improve things. The camera reached a corner and showed the edge of a metal cabinet. Beyond it stood a squat rectangular box with a handle on top. Savannah bent closer to the screen. Can you reach the other walls? Not from this angle. Then what? Then I find the old renovation drawings before we start knocking bricks out. Where? Company files, maybe? Savannah looked toward the Reed Freight Line's office. Todd has those? Sean removed the camera. City Building Department might have a copy. The building department had one set of microfilm plans from the 1985 renovation. Savannah and Sean spent the next morning at a viewing machine while a staff member showed them how to move through the frames. The plans described the cellar as a former cold storage room beneath the freight platform. It had been emptied and closed after water damage made the stairs unsafe. The doorway had been filled with brick beneath an existing steel lintel. Nothing in the drawing suggested the wall supported the platform. Savannah paid for copies with quarters from the bottom of her purse. Sean read them in the parking lot. We can remove enough bricks to enter. We brace the opening first and stay away from the old stairs. When? I've got 2 loads today. I can start. No. You said it isn't holding anything up. I said the drawing says that. Buildings get creative after 40 years. Savannah folded the plans. I'm not waiting a week. I'll be back tomorrow morning. You said 2 loads. I also own the business. One of the few benefits is disappointing customers personally. He returned before 8 the next day with timber, work lights, masks, and a rented rotary hammer. Olivia arrived carrying a thermos and the old ledger page inside a clear document sleeve. She had spent the previous day searching boxes at home. I found invoices, payroll records, and every Christmas card Robert received for 11 years, she said. I did not find the closing file. Could it be in storage? Savannah asked. It could be under my sewing machine. I had a system when I packed. I no longer understand it. They worked from the lower edge of the infill wall. Sean loosened the mortar around one brick, while Savannah cleared dust. The first brick came out whole, the next broke in half. After 6 bricks, the hole was wide enough for cool, stale air to flow against their faces. It smelled of concrete and rust. Sean aimed a work light through the opening. The cellar was larger than the camera had made it seem. Metal shelves lined one wall. The old stairs had partly collapsed, leaving a pile of boards and plaster near the far corner. The box they had seen stood beneath a canvas cover. They removed bricks until Sean could climb through. He checked the ceiling and floor, then called back. "It's dry." Savannah ducked beneath the timber. The cellar ceiling was low enough that Sean's cap brushed one pipe. Savannah could stand comfortably. Dust covered everything, but there were no animal droppings, footprints, or signs that anyone had entered since the wall was built. Olivia stayed outside the opening. "I've decided my contribution is not getting trapped under a platform." Sean lifted the canvas. Beneath it sat a gray fireproof lockbox. Its corners were scuffed, but the lid had no rust. A brass plate on the front carried the name of a Tucson safe company. The lock required a key. Savannah tried the depot key. It entered smoothly. She looked at Sean. "This key opens both?" "Looks that way." She turned it. The lock clicked. For a moment, Savannah rested her hand on the lid. She was aware of the dirt on her knees, the weight of the building above her, and Olivia waiting on the other side of the bricks. Then she opened the box. Several canvas bags filled the lower half. Rolled documents lay above them, inside a metal tray. An envelope with Savannah's name rested on top. The writing was Robert's. She took the envelope first. It wasn't sealed. Inside were 6 pages covered in the firm block letters he used for notes that mattered. Savannah read the first line silently. "If you found this, you kept the depot long enough to ask why." She sat on an overturned milk crate. Sean moved toward the opening. "I'll give you room." "No, stay." He stopped near the wall. Olivia called. "What is it?" "A letter." Savannah read aloud. "If you found this, you kept the depot long enough to ask why. I'm sorry I made you ask while you were grieving. I did it because a paper handed across a desk can be signed away before a person understands what it carries. A building makes you look at it first." Her voice caught on the last word. She cleared her throat. "The depot was never company property. I bought it after the railroad closed the branch in 1979. I used Benson Freight Property Company because the railroad wanted a clean sale, and because I knew I would be starting a hauling company afterward. I leased the siding and yard to Reed Freight Lines for business use. I did not give the land to the company." Sean crouched beside the lockbox. Savannah continued. "I placed my beneficial ownership in a private trust. Your mother, Brianna, was next in line. Her living descendants came after her. That means you, Savannah. Todd was never promised this property. He was promised a chance to operate the freight company well." Olivia lowered herself carefully through the opening. Savannah kept reading. "After your mother died, I considered putting your name on everything immediately. Olivia talked me out of it, and she was right. You were too young to carry property that other adults wanted to control. The trust holds it until you turn 18. The will leaves you my key and any personal claim remaining. But the trust is the important paper." Savannah glanced at Olivia. "You talked him out of it?" "I told him control given too early could become control handed to someone else." "Did you know the trust made it mine?" "I knew what he intended. I didn't remember the exact language." Savannah returned to the letter. "The original declaration and deed are in this box. Olivia retained a duplicate, unless she finally cleaned her files the way she always threatened. The county record will show the property company. The trust papers explain who owns that company's interest now." Olivia closed her eyes briefly. "I told him those files were organized." Sean almost smiled. Savannah unfolded the next page. "There is silver in the canvas bags. It is not a fortune, regardless of what the coin dealers say when they want your business. It is a reserve. Pay the taxes. Make the building safe. Keep enough for the next roof, because roofs do not care about family emergencies." Savannah looked into the box. Sean lifted one canvas bag just enough to test its weight. "That's not pocket change." The bag gave a heavy, close rattle. Silver coins. Some were packed in paper rolls. Others were wrapped in cloth and labeled by year. Robert had listed the contents on a card, but Savannah didn't understand the collector's marks beside them. She read the last section of the letter more slowly. I cannot tell you what to do with the depot. Your mother wanted it alive again. I wanted that too, but a gift that requires obedience is only another job. Learn what the place is, learn who needs it, then choose. Do not let Todd tell you Reed Freight Lines owns the land. It does not. There was a limited operating lease signed in 1980. That lease ended years ago. A copy is enclosed. Do not fight him just to fight him. The company matters. People earn their living there. Protect the depot without trying to damage what he inherited. If the siding ever becomes useful again, remember it belongs with the depot parcel. That was the reason I bought the full strip instead of only the building. Savannah stopped reading. Outside, a truck changed gears on 4th Street. She could hear Curtis's new outlet powering the work light above them. What does he mean if the siding becomes useful? She asked. Sean looked toward the cellar wall nearest the tracks. I don't know. Rail service hasn't used this spur in years. Then why mention it? Because Robert never wrote an extra sentence if he could help it. Olivia took the document tray from the lockbox and set it on the concrete floor. The first paper carried a notary seal dated 1979. Beneath it was a description of the full depot parcel, including the freight platform, yard access, and a strip of land following the siding. Another document established Benson Freight Property Company as the named holder. The private trust declaration came next. Its pages were thin and closely typed. Olivia read the succession section twice. This is what he described, she said. Robert held the beneficial interest during his life. Brianna followed him. Then her living descendants. That makes Savannah the only one, Sean said. It appears to. Appears? Savannah asked. These are old documents. They need to be checked against county records. We need to confirm the property company stayed active and that Robert didn't record something later that changed it. Would he have put the papers here if he changed it? No, but I'm not going to tell you a legal result before someone verifies the chain. Savannah looked at the deed. It was real enough to touch. Robert's signature appeared at the bottom. A notary had pressed a seal into the paper, hard enough to leave a raised circle after all those years. Still, she understood Olivia's caution. Todd had a house deed and company documents prepared for an estate attorney. Savannah had papers taken from a room nobody knew existed. What do I do first? She asked. Make copies, Olivia said. Then put the originals somewhere safer than a hole in a wall. Sean nodded. And don't post pictures. Don't tell anyone what's in the box. I already told the county clerk I inherited the depot. That's fine. Don't tell Todd about the trust until we know it holds. Savannah looked at the silver bags. How much is this worth? Depends on the coins, Sean said. Olivia read the inventory card. Enough to solve the tax problem, I think. Maybe enough for repairs. Robert bought silver in small amounts for years. Savannah picked up one coin through its cloth wrapping. It felt heavy for its size. 3 days earlier, she had rationed motel money. Now, a box beneath the platform might pay the taxes that had made everyone laugh. That changed her immediate danger. It did not tell her whom she could trust with the documents, whether the county would recognize them, or what Todd would do when he learned the depot had never belonged to Reed Freight Lines. Sean found a second envelope beneath the operating lease. This one was addressed to Brianna. Savannah didn't open it, not yet. She returned it to the tray and took Robert's letter upstairs. They spent the afternoon making copies at Olivia's house. Olivia placed the originals inside a locking file case and wrote a receipt for every page, even though Savannah told her it wasn't necessary. It is necessary, Olivia said. People remember paperwork differently when property becomes valuable. Savannah kept one copy of the deed and trust in her backpack. Sean stored another in his office safe. The photographs remained on Savannah's phone and in 2 separate email accounts. Before dark, they returned to the depot. Savannah stood beside the siding, with Robert's parcel description in her hand. The strip looked ordinary. Rust covered the rails. Dry weeds grew between the ties. A section of chain link leaned across the southern edge. Sean paced the boundary using the measurements from the deed. It goes farther than I thought, he said. How far? Past the loading yard. Almost to the old grain access. Savannah followed him along the track until the depot looked smaller behind them. The land Todd had treated as part of the company yard might belong to her. The wall beneath the platform had protected more than coins. It had protected the difference between being allowed to stay and having the right to stay. Her phone rang. Todd's name appeared on the screen. Sean saw it. You don't have to answer. Savannah folded the parcel description and put it in her pocket. Yes, I do. She accepted the call. Todd didn't say hello. Why were you at the county building asking about company property? Savannah stepped away from Sean and the track. It isn't company property. Todd went silent for a moment. What did you say? I said I was asking about the depot. The yard is part of the company. According to what? According to 30 years of operating it. That isn't paperwork. His breathing changed. Savannah could picture him at Robert's desk, with the freight map spread open and company files piled around him. Jeffrey saw you at the county office, Todd said. He was registering the Kenworth. He heard you give the 4th Street address. That still doesn't make it company property. You've had a key for less than a week, Savannah. Don't start telling me how the business works. I didn't ask about the business. Then why were you there? She looked at Sean. He shook his head once. I wanted the correct tax balance. The balance is your problem. That's what you inherited. You seem pretty sure of that at the reading. Because it's true. Then you don't need to worry. Todd's voice dropped. I need access to that yard. Sean needs access. Drivers need space to turn. If you start filing claims or putting up fences, you're going to hurt people who have nothing to do with this. I haven't put up a fence. I'm telling you not to. Savannah thought of Robert's letter. Protect the depot without trying to damage what he inherited. I won't block the company from using the yard while I check the records. While you check them? Yes. I'm coming down there. Not tonight. You don't get to order me off property my company has used since before you were born. The building locks. I'm staying in it. Call before you come. Todd laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Robert really did a number on you. He ended the call. Sean waited until Savannah lowered the phone. He didn't know about the trust. No, he knows there's a question now. Savannah looked along the rusted siding. Then I need answers before he finds his own. The next morning, she called the number posted on a weathered railway marker near the southern boundary. It led to a maintenance office, then to a property department, then to a woman who asked Savannah to send photographs and the parcel description. Savannah expected nothing to come of it. Aiden Fitzgerald called her that afternoon. I manage regional freight development for Sonoran Southern Railway, he said. Are you the owner of the Benson Depot siding? I may be. That's an unusual answer. The title is being checked. Who currently controls access? I have the depot key. My grandfather's company uses part of the yard. Read freight lines? Yes. Aiden paused. We've been trying to identify the actual landholder for several months. Savannah sat straighter in Robert's office chair. Why? We're evaluating interchange locations along the corridor. Benson has highway access, level approach, and enough siding length if the original parcel wasn't divided. What kind of interchange? Rail cars come in, freight transfers to trucks, sometimes the reverse. We need staging room and legal access to the siding. Can't you do that somewhere else? The next workable point is about 40 miles away. It adds time to every load. Savannah looked through the office window at Sean's flatbed. What would you need from me? First, permission to inspect. After that, if the site works, we discuss a lease. What is a siding lease worth? I'd rather inspect before putting numbers in your head. Put one there anyway. Aiden laughed softly. For a usable interchange site with exclusive operating windows, approximately $18,000 a month. That would depend on boundaries, improvements, insurance, and title. Savannah said nothing. Ms. Reed, I'm here. That number is not an offer yet, I understand. She did understand the words. Her mind still placed them beside the $6,400 everyone had used to make the depot sound impossible. When can you inspect? She asked. Friday morning. Aiden arrived in a white utility vehicle with the railway's name printed on both doors. He wore work pants and a pale blue shirt, with the sleeves rolled neatly to his elbows. He brought a survey technician and a folder of old track diagrams. Sean joined them at the platform. Aiden walked the full siding twice. He checked rail spacing, photographed the switch, and stood at the yard entrance watching a tractor trailer make the turn from 4th Street. The gate needs widening, he said. Sean nodded. 3 feet would help. 5 would be better. 5 costs more. 3 costs twice when you redo it. They understood each other quickly. Savannah followed with Robert's parcel copy in a plastic sleeve. Aiden compared it to his diagrams. If this description holds, the track, platform, and usable yard sit under one ownership, he said. That's what we need. What repairs, rail ties, switch work, platform reinforcement, fencing, lighting. We'd take responsibility for rail-specific improvements under a long lease. Building repairs would remain yours. Could Sean's business handle transfers? Aiden looked at Sean. If he meets our insurance and scheduling requirements. I can meet them, Sean said. Aiden didn't accept the claim just because Sean made it. Send me your current coverage and equipment list. I will, Savannah asked. What happens to Reed Freight Lines? They can bid on local haulage like anyone else. Existing yard access is a separate issue between you and them. She appreciated the plain answer. The railway didn't care which part of her family felt entitled. It cared about turning radius, track ownership, and whether freight could move on time. Aiden handed Savannah a written request for temporary inspection access. It wasn't a lease offer, but it named her as the prospective property controller. Have whoever checks your title call me, he said. Once ownership is clear, I can issue formal terms. He left shortly before noon. Todd's truck entered the yard as the railway vehicle turned onto 4th Street. Holly sat beside him. Todd parked close to the depot steps. He got out before the engine stopped shaking. What was Sonoran Southern doing here? Savannah remained on the platform. They inspected the siding. Who called them? I did. Todd looked at Sean. You helped her? She asked me to be here. I'm asking whether you helped her contact them. No. She did that herself. Holly climbed out more slowly. Her eyes moved over the tarped roof, the repaired gutter, and the extension cord running through the office doorway. You're really sleeping here, she said. Savannah looked at Todd. Why do you care about the railway? They've called the company twice this year, asking who controlled the siding. You didn't mention that. There was nothing to mention. The track hasn't carried freight in years. They want to lease it. Todd's face went still. Holly asked, lease it for what? An interchange. How much? Todd said. They haven't made a formal offer. How much did they discuss? Savannah didn't answer. Sean began gathering loose tools. He wasn't leaving, and Todd knew it. Savannah, Todd said, this isn't a game. What number? About $18,000 a month if the site qualifies. Holly turned toward the siding. Todd looked as though he had heard something painful. Then his expression changed. The anger remained, but it gained direction. The company owns operating rights. An old lease gave it limited use. You've been going through records. I found records. Where? In the depot. Todd's eyes went to the open door. Savannah stepped between him and the entrance. You need to call before coming inside. That building was the company office. It isn't yours. You don't know that. I know Grandpa bought the property before Reed Freight Lines existed. Holly looked at Todd. He hadn't known. Savannah saw that clearly. Todd recovered quickly. If he bought it, he put it into the company later. No. He leased operating use to the company in 1980. You have the lease? A copy. Let me see it. Not today. Todd moved toward the steps. Sean set down his toolbox. Todd? The warning was quiet. Todd stopped. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Holly touched her husband's arm. Not here. He pulled away from her, but he didn't climb the steps. You think this lease makes you rich? He asked Savannah. I think it might keep the depot standing. The depot. Always the depot. His voice rose. Do you know what Dad left me? Trucks with payments, contracts with fuel caps written before diesel went up. A company line of credit that's almost finished. 2 customers owe us money, and one of them may file bankruptcy before we collect. Savannah listened. Todd had complained about business for years, but always in pieces. A late customer, a repair bill, a driver who quit. He had never placed the pieces together where she could see them. How much does the company owe? She asked. That's not your concern. It is if you're claiming my land. Todd looked toward the newer loading bays. We're behind on the equipment loan. The lender gave us until the end of next month to bring it current. If they take 3 trucks, we lose routes. If we lose routes, the company doesn't recover, Holly said. Todd, stop. No. She wants facts. He faced Savannah again. Your grandfather knew. I asked him to use the depot land as collateral. He refused. I thought it was because the title was a mess or the place wasn't worth enough. Now I find out he was sitting on the only siding the railway wants. Savannah finally understood the hurry at the house. Todd hadn't moved quickly only because he wanted Robert's desk. He needed every company record, every asset, and every piece of property he could show a lender. The house gave him security. The depot yard might give him cash. "Did you take out the loans?" she asked. "I kept the business running. That wasn't my question." "Yes, I signed them." "Did Grandpa agree?" He knew what the money was for. "Did he agree?" Todd's mouth tightened. "He stopped signing company debt 2 years ago." Sean looked at the ground. That answered more than Todd intended. Holly stepped closer to Savannah. "Your uncle is trying to protect something Robert spent his whole life building. Nobody wants to take your little building away. The siding is part of the depot parcel. We don't know that yet. I have the description. Then there must be a way for the company to manage it for you. You shouldn't be negotiating a freight lease by yourself." "I wasn't by myself." Holly glanced at Sean. "That isn't what I meant." It was the same sentence she had sent after Savannah's first night. Holly looked through the depot door. Her attention paused on the exposed panel behind the ticket counter and the work light near the platform passage. "You've opened walls. I'm repairing the building. This is not safe." Curtis checked the power. Sean checked the platform opening. "The platform opening?" Savannah didn't answer. Holly took out her phone. "What are you doing?" Savannah asked, documenting the condition. "If something happens, no one can say we knew and ignored it." She photographed the tarp, the cracked window, and the ceiling stains. Sean moved into her line of sight. "You can stop." Holly lowered the phone. "I'm trying to keep her from getting hurt." "No," Savannah said. "You're making a record." Holly's face hardened for the first time. "You have no idea how this looks. Robert dies, Todd inherits a struggling company, and you start telling people we put you in a ruined station while you negotiate with a railroad behind our backs. You did put me here. We offered you help. You offered a few motel nights after telling me to leave." Todd opened his truck door. "This discussion is done." "It was done when you came here," Savannah said. He looked back at her. "The operating lease may not say what you think it says. I'm having a lawyer review the company files. You do that." Todd got into the truck. Holly remained beside the platform for another moment. "You can still come home," she said. "We can handle this properly." Savannah looked at the phone in Holly's hand. "Who's home?" Holly didn't answer. She joined Todd, and they drove toward the company office. Sean waited until their truck disappeared behind the loading bays. "He's scared," he said. "So am I. Scared people reach for whatever's close." Savannah watched Todd unlock Robert's old freight office. "He's reaching for the depot." Inside the building, her phone rang again. This time, it was Miriam Lang. Savannah gripped the brass key. "What happens now?" "You get every paper you found authenticated before Todd gets his version accepted as fact." Miriam gave her an appointment for the next morning and told her not to bring the silver. "Only the documents," she said. "Originals stay with Olivia until we have secure storage." "What about Todd?" "Do not send him anything. His lawyer asked for copies before telling me the basis of their claim." "Can they stop the railway inspection?" "They can make noise. They cannot stop you from gathering facts." After the call, Savannah locked the depot and drove with Sean to Olivia's house. They found Olivia in her garage surrounded by file boxes. A folding table had disappeared beneath old bank statements, property receipts, payroll summaries, and envelopes labeled in her careful handwriting. She had tied her hair back with a red scarf and placed a dust mask on top of her head. "I found it," she said. Savannah stopped beside the table. Olivia lifted a flat brown folder. The label read, "Benson Depot Closing, Robert Private." "Where was it?" "In a box marked kitchen linens." Sean looked around. "That's a bad system." "It was behind the linens." "I knew exactly what I was doing." Inside was a duplicate of the trust declaration, a copy of the 1979 deed, and a signed memorandum describing Benson Freight Property Company's role. There was also a complete copy of the 1980 operating lease. Savannah laid her copy from the vault beside Olivia's. The pages matched. The same misspelled word appeared in the third paragraph. The signatures sat in the same positions. Olivia's copy carried a blue ink stamp on the back. "What's that?" Savannah asked. "The notary's file mark. She kept a register and stamped the duplicate after entering it." "Is she still alive?" "No, but her register should be archived with the county clerk." Sean opened the operating lease. "Here." He pointed to a paragraph on the second page. Reed Freight Lines had received non-exclusive operating access to the siding, platform, and loading yard for 20 years. The lease allowed trucks, freight handling, and equipment storage connected to company business. It did not transfer ownership. It also included a sentence Todd had not mentioned. Any continued use after the term ended would be by permission of the property holder and would not create a permanent interest. The 20 years ended a long time ago, Savannah said. In 2000, Olivia replied. Robert kept letting the company use it. Yes, permission isn't ownership. Sean took out his phone and photographed every page. Olivia placed one finger on the trust declaration. Photographs are useful. Certified copies are better. Miriam arranged for them to meet Dustin Kennedy at the county title office. His room was behind the public tax counter, past 2 locked doors and a row of metal shelves holding record books. Dustin wore a brown tie and reading glasses that kept sliding down his nose. He didn't look surprised by the age of Savannah's documents. Rail property, he said. It's always rail property. He asked Savannah to explain where each paper had come from. She told him about the wall, the strong box, the bricked cellar, and Olivia's duplicate file. Dustin took notes. Who touched the originals after discovery? Savannah, me, and Sean, Olivia said. Anybody else? No. Have they been altered, written on, cleaned, laminated, or repaired? No. Good. Never laminate old legal documents. Savannah glanced at Miriam. Wasn't planning to. People do. Dustin began with the deed. He entered its recording number into a county database, found only a short index entry, then disappeared into the records room. He returned pushing a cart with a large book and a roll of microfilm. The recorded image showed Southern Pacific's property division transferring the depot parcel to Benson Freight Property Company in 1979. Dustin compared the description line by line: building, platform, yard, access lane, and siding strip, he said. All one parcel at transfer. Could the siding have been separated later? Savannah asked. It could have been. Let's see if it was. He searched subsequent transfers, liens, boundary changes, and easements. The work was slow. Savannah sat beside Olivia while Sean paced between the door and a county map on the wall. Dustin found utility easements. He found a road access agreement. He found the memorandum of the 1980 operating lease. He did not find a sale or transfer to Reed Freight Lines. What does that mean? Savannah asked. It means the county record does not support the company owning this parcel. Does it support me owning it? That takes another step. He turned to the private trust declaration. This document wasn't recorded with the deed. That isn't automatically a problem. Private beneficial agreements often stayed private, especially with closely held companies. But if someone disputes it, we need evidence that it existed when it says it existed. Olivia handed him her duplicate. Dustin checked the blue stamp against an archived notary index. The registration number matched. The notary's journal listed Robert Reed, the document type, the date, and 2 signed copies. He compared the paper, typeface, staple marks, and signatures. These appear to be counterparts from the same execution, he said. Meaning? Savannah asked. Meaning Olivia's copy supports the one found in the vault. The notary journal supports both. He read the succession language twice. Robert retained control for life. Brianna Reed followed. If Brianna died before taking control, her living descendants followed when legally eligible. Is Savannah her only living descendant? Yes, Olivia said. Dustin looked at Savannah. And you are 18? Yes, identification. She handed him her driver's license. He copied the information onto his worksheet. The trust language points to you as the current beneficial owner. The holding company remains the named title holder, but its property interest is controlled under this declaration. So, I own the depot. Based on what I have in front of me, yes. Savannah's hand stayed flat against the table. She had expected relief to feel larger. Instead, it felt solid and quiet, like a door closing properly. Can Todd take it through the operating lease? Dustin opened Olivia's complete copy. No, this lease gave limited use for 20 years. The recorded memorandum says the same. It expired. Continued permission afterward did not create ownership. What about the company using the yard now? That may establish recent permitted use. It does not revive an expired transfer right that never existed. Could Todd record his own claim? He can file a notice that there is a dispute. That would slow a lease or sale until the issue is heard. It would not make his claim correct. Miriam asked, "Will you prepare a title examination report? I can prepare a certified findings summary and the county record chain. If this becomes a contested hearing, I can explain it there." Savannah looked at the parcel map on his desk. The railway says it needs the siding. Dustin traced the boundary with a capped pen. The siding strip is inside the recorded parcel. No later deed removes it. That was the lever Robert had left her, not the silver by itself, not the letter asking her to keep the depot. The boundary in the county record placed the only useful siding within the same ownership as the building. The trust placed that ownership with Savannah. Dustin ordered certified copies of the deed image, lease memorandum, easements, and notary register. He told them the report would take several days. Before they left, Savannah asked one more question. Did my grandfather hide this illegally? No. Then why wasn't it obvious at the will reading? Because the will wasn't the document that transferred control. The trust did that separately. Your attorney read the estate papers she had. She wasn't running a full title search on every old address mentioned in one sentence. Miriam accepted the correction without protest. I should have checked once the property appeared in the will. You should check now, Dustin said. That's what everyone is doing. Outside the title office, Savannah sat on a bench near the courthouse entrance. People passed carrying folders and coffee cups. A delivery driver rolled a hand truck over the pavement. Nothing around her had changed, but she no longer felt as though she were asking permission to keep a place everyone else had rejected. Olivia sat beside her. Robert should have made this easier. Savannah looked at the brass key. Why didn't he? Because he trusted paper less than he trusted your stubbornness. That isn't a good reason. No. Olivia didn't defend him. Savannah was grateful for that. Sean stood in front of them. We need to handle the tax balance. The silver was appraised that afternoon by a coin dealer Miriam recommended. Savannah brought only the inventory and a small sample from each labeled group. Most of the reserve was valued for its silver content. Several older coins had collector value and needed separate review. Even with a cautious estimate, the bags held enough to pay the full tax balance, repair the roof, and leave an emergency reserve. Savannah sold only the ordinary silver needed for the taxes. She watched the dealer count the payment twice, then carried a cashier's check to the county office before closing. Dana Pierce recognized her. You brought paperwork, a lot of it. Dana accepted the check and printed a receipt showing the delinquent balance paid in full. She also gave Savannah a copy of the active account under Benson Freight Property Company, marked pending trust verification. No tax sale risk, Dana said. Not from this balance. Savannah folded the receipt into her backpack. Sean met her outside with a file box from his hauling office. My bookkeeper found everything. The box held 8 years of insurance declarations and property payment receipts. Each policy named the depot building, separately from Reed Freight Lines. Robert was listed as the property contact. Benson Freight Property Company appeared under additional interest. Sean's canceled check showed payments made under his yard use arrangement. Olivia added them to the evidence list. They establish maintenance and separate treatment, she said. They also show Todd's company wasn't paying these bills. Will that matter? Savannah asked. It will when he says the depot was always a company asset. 2 days later, Aiden returned with a written conditional lease proposal. The railway offered approximately $18,000 per month, after title clearance and completion of specific safety work. Sonoran Southern would repair the switch, replace damaged ties, and install rail lighting. Savannah would provide yard access, maintain the depot structure, and preserve a truck route through the property. She read the document at the ticket counter while Aiden waited. I want Sean's hauling business included as the first local transfer operator if he qualifies, she said. Aiden nodded. We can include a right to bid and a preference based on response time. I can't guarantee work he doesn't have equipment for. That's fair. I also need clarity on Reed Freight Lines. They're using part of the yard. I don't want to shut them out. Then define their access before we sign. Informal arrangements become expensive once freight starts moving. Savannah wrote that down. She wasn't ready to sign the full lease. She signed only an authorization allowing engineering review, subject to her ownership being confirmed. That evening, Miriam brought Dustin's certified report to the depot. Savannah spread everything across the ticket counter. The original trust stayed locked in Miriam's fireproof cabinet. Olivia's duplicate went into a bank deposit box. Sean kept the receipts and insurance copies. Aiden's proposal sat beside the county parcel map. Miriam tapped the title report. This is strong. Todd can still force a hearing if he files a dispute, but he cannot honestly say the county record gives the company ownership. Honestly isn't the same as publicly, Savannah said. No. Savannah placed the brass key on top of the report. For the first time, every useful fact pointed in the same direction. She had the trust, the matching duplicate, the notary record, the expired lease, the parcel boundary, the tax receipt, and a real railway proposal. None of it had been shown to Todd. Then headlights crossed the waiting room windows. A county vehicle stopped outside the depot. A county inspector stepped out carrying a clipboard and a bright orange notice. Savannah opened the front door before he knocked. Savannah Reed? Yes, I'm here regarding an unsafe occupancy complaint. Miriam came beside her. Who made the complaint? Savannah asked. I can give you a copy. The inspector handed her 2 pages. The complaint listed roof leaks, exposed wiring, unstable flooring, broken windows, and unauthorized living space. Photographs had been attached. Savannah recognized Holly's angles, the tarp, the ceiling stains, the panel removed behind the ticket counter. The complaint also claimed the property was controlled by Reed Freight Lines and that Savannah had entered without clear authorization. What happens now? She asked. I inspect. If there's an immediate danger, I post the building against occupancy. Otherwise, I write corrections and set deadlines. Can we do the inspection now? The man looked past her at Miriam. You're her attorney? I represent her regarding the title dispute. He checked another page. There's a title dispute too? There may be. He sighed. There always is. Savannah let him inside. She didn't show him the trust report. Miriam had already told her not to argue ownership with someone assigned to inspect outlets and exits. Savannah showed him Curtis's electrical work, Sean's roof patch, the repaired front lock, and the bathroom plumbing. He tested the smoke alarm Savannah had installed that morning. He photographed the broken panes and measured the soft section of platform. You cannot use the eastern platform until this is repaired, he said. I don't. The cellar opening needs a temporary barrier. We can build one tonight. Roof repair? I have estimates coming. He examined the room where Savannah slept. There was now a folding cot, a clean sheet, a lamp, and a metal cabinet for food. The office outlet powered a small refrigerator Sean had brought from his shop. This was not designed as a residence, the inspector said. It has water, power, 2 exits, and a bathroom. It may still require a change of use permit. Can I stay tonight? He looked around again. I don't see an immediate condition requiring removal tonight. That is not approval. You'll receive written corrections. Outside, he attached the orange notice beside the front door. Inspection pending. It wasn't a condemnation, but anyone driving past would see it. Holly had created the picture she wanted. Savannah standing in a damaged building, with a county notice on the door. Because the railway proposal depended on title clearance, the county scheduled a hearing. The code complaint involved the same parcel and the same ownership question, so both matters were placed before one hearing officer. Todd's lawyer asked for an order stopping Savannah from signing any lease until the dispute ended. The request was granted temporarily. Aiden called after receiving notice. We pause engineering work, he said. The proposal remains open for now. How long is now? 30 days without a problem. After that, I need approval to keep the funds assigned. The hearing was set for the following week. 2 days before it, Jeffrey came to the depot alone. He parked the blue Kenworth beside the platform and left its engine running. Savannah was replacing a cracked waiting room window with Sean. Jeffrey stood outside until she put down the glazing tool. Can we talk? Turn off the truck. Why? The exhaust comes inside. He returned to the cab and shut it down. Sean kept working near the window. Jeffrey glanced at him. Privately? Anything about the depot can be said here. Jeffrey took an envelope from his back pocket. My dad doesn't know I'm doing this. Savannah didn't believe that, but she accepted the envelope. Inside was a 1-page offer to buy her entire interest in the building, yard, and siding. The price was $25,000. She read it twice. That's less than 2 months of the railway lease. The lease isn't approved. The silver reserve is worth more. Jeffrey's eyes moved toward the platform cellar. So, there was money. You didn't know? Everybody knows now. Holly told my mom's sister, and she told half the family. Holly is your mother. Jeffrey looked irritated. You know what I meant? Savannah handed back the paper. No. Just think about it. I did. You were sleeping on a bench last week. 25,000 gives you a deposit, furniture, maybe school if you want it, and gives your father the siding. He can keep the company alive. Then why is the offer from you? Jeffrey folded the page. Because Dad's lawyer said buying your claim could settle everything. So, he does know. Jeffrey looked away. Sean fitted the new pane into place. Your truck came from the company, Savannah said. Are there payments on it? No. Grandpa cleared that one. Then you got the asset that wasn't carrying debt. I didn't make the will. Neither did I. He tucked the offer back into the envelope. You always acted like Grandpa chose you. Savannah held still. Jeffrey had never said that before. He raised me. He let you follow him everywhere. You knew what mood he was in. You knew when to ask for things. I didn't ask him for the depot. No, you just got the one thing nobody knew mattered. There it was. Jeffrey didn't want the building because he loved it. He wanted to turn an unexpected advantage into another secure asset. The truck had shown him what it felt like to receive something free and immediately useful. Now he saw the siding the same way. I'm not selling it to you, Savannah said. What if I raise the offer? No. You don't even know the number. I know what you're buying. Jeffrey walked back to the Kenworth. Before climbing in, he said, At the hearing, Dad's going to show that Grandpa ran the whole property through the company. You should take money while somebody is offering. Savannah watched him drive away. Sean pressed glazing putty along the window edge. You all right? No. Good answer. The hearing room in the county seat had beige walls, rows of plastic chairs, and a seal mounted behind the officer's desk. Todd arrived with Holly, Jeffrey, and their lawyer. Holly wore a navy dress Savannah remembered from Robert's memorial service. Todd carried Robert's freight map in a cardboard tube. Aiden sat behind Savannah with the railway proposal in a black folder. Sean placed his receipt box beneath his chair. Olivia held the bank deposit box receipt and her certified duplicate. Dustin waited near the county council's table with the title record. Todd saw all of them. His confidence slipped for 1 second, then returned. He believed the lease controlled the siding. He believed the company's long use mattered more than papers hidden in a cellar. Most of all, he believed Savannah's age and the depot's condition would make every adult in the room view him as the responsible choice. The hearing officer called the code matter first, then the title objection. Todd's lawyer stood. My client inherited Reed Freight Lines, a long-running local company founded and operated by his father. That company has used the depot yard and siding continuously since 1980. Ms. Reed received a key and a vague personal claim to a deteriorated building. She did not receive authority to seize active company land or negotiate away its operating rights. Savannah looked at Miriam. Miriam wrote one word on her pad. Wait. Todd's lawyer presented the old lease memorandum. He described it as the foundation of continuous company control. He did not read the expiration language aloud. Then Todd testified. My father treated the yard as part of Reed Freight Lines for decades, he said. The trucks parked there. Employees worked there. Company freight crossed that platform. Did your father ever tell you the company owned the underlying land? The hearing officer asked. He didn't separate the two. It wasn't an answer, but Todd continued. Savannah has no experience managing freight property. She moved into an unsafe structure, opened sealed walls, and contacted a railway without consulting the company that depends on that yard. Are you claiming ownership of the depot building too? Todd glanced at Holly. The building can remain hers if it's made safe. We're claiming the siding, loading yard, and operating access. That division didn't appear anywhere in Robert's documents. Todd invented it because the building still looked expensive, and the siding did not. The hearing officer asked, What result are you requesting? Recognize Reed Freight Lines as the controlling operator and prevent Ms. Reed from leasing the siding independently, based on the 1980 lease and continuous use. Holly testified next about the code complaint. She said Savannah had been offered safe housing and refused it. She said the family had acted out of concern. She submitted the photographs from her visit. Did you inspect the electrical system? The hearing officer asked. No. The roof structure? No. Did you speak to a contractor before filing? I saw enough to believe she was in danger. Did you tell Ms. Reed you intended to report the property? Holly hesitated. I told her I was documenting it. The hearing officer marked the photographs and moved to Jeffrey's statement. He confirmed the company had used the yard throughout his working life. Todd's lawyer did not ask about the purchase offer. Miriam did. You offered Savannah $25,000 for all her interest 2 days ago? Jeffrey shifted in his chair. Yes. Why buy an interest you believe she doesn't possess? My father's lawyer said it could avoid a fight. Todd turned toward him. That part had not been meant for the room. Miriam sat down without another question. The hearing officer reviewed her notes. Mr. Reed, is there anything else supporting your claim? Todd looked at his lawyer. Then he looked directly at Savannah. Yes, he said. My father never intended an 18-year-old with no home and no business experience to control the freight access his company needs. Whatever she found inside that building does not change 46 years of reality. He had committed to it now. The building was hers only when it carried bills. The land was his once it carried value. Robert's intent mattered only when Todd could speak for it. The hearing officer turned to Savannah's side. Ms. Reed, you may present your response. Miriam stood and called Dustin Kennedy first. He carried the county record book to the witness table and opened his certified report. What did you find when you examined the depot title? Miriam asked. The recorded deed transferred the full parcel to Benson Freight Property Company in 1979. Before Reed Freight Lines existed? Yes. Did the company ever receive ownership? No deed in the county chain transfers ownership to Reed Freight Lines. Todd's lawyer rose. But there was an operating lease. There was. Dustin turned to the recorded memorandum. It gave Reed Freight Lines non-exclusive use of the siding, platform, and yard for 20 years. It expired in 2000. Continued use afterward was by the property holder's permission. Could continuous use create permanent operating rights? Not under this lease. Dustin placed the parcel map on the display board. The boundary surrounded the depot, loading yard, platform, and full siding strip. Todd leaned toward his lawyer. Miriam asked, who currently controls the property company's beneficial interest? Dustin looked at Savannah. Under the trust documents I examined, Savannah Reed. Todd's lawyer objected. The alleged trust came from inside a wall. We have no reliable proof of when it was created. Miriam called Olivia. Olivia carried her brown folder to the table. She explained where her duplicate had been kept and why Robert had asked her to preserve it. Then she showed the blue notary stamp. The county register records 2 copies executed that day, Dustin said. The signatures, paper, page arrangement, and notary file number match. Olivia looked at Todd. Your father kept the depot separate because he intended it for Brianna. After she died, he protected it for Savannah until she turned 18. Todd's face reddened. He never told me that. No, Olivia said. He did not. Why should anyone believe you knew his intent? Because I kept his books for 30 years. I prepared the company's payments. I saw what belonged to Reed Freight Lines and what did not. The depot taxes and insurance were never company expenses. Sean opened his receipt box. Miriam presented 8 years of insurance records and property payments, each named Robert or Benson Freight Property Company, none named Reed Freight Lines as owner. Todd's lawyer tried to turn the payments into proof that Sean had his own claim. Sean shook his head. I paid for yard use. Robert never offered me ownership, and I never asked for it. Aiden came next. He confirmed that Sonoran Southern had inspected the siding and prepared a conditional lease worth approximately $18,000 per month. Who did the railway negotiate with? Miriam asked. Savannah Reed. Why? She controlled access and presented a parcel description matching our track records. Does the railway need Reed Freight Lines to operate the interchange? No. The local truck work can be performed by any qualified carrier. Todd stared at the table. The company had never been the key to the railway offer. The land was. The county inspector gave the final testimony. He listed the repairs Savannah had completed and the remaining permit work. Is the depot condemned? The hearing officer asked. No. Did you find an immediate danger requiring removal? No. Can the remaining violations be corrected? Yes. Roof repair, platform restriction, glazing, and a change of use application. Work is already underway. The hearing officer reviewed the documents in silence. Savannah could hear the air conditioner clicking above them. At last, the officer looked at Todd. Your claim relies on an expired limited use lease. The county record shows no transfer of the depot parcel or siding to Reed Freight Lines. Continuous permitted use does not create the ownership you asserted. Todd's lawyer began to rise. The officer lifted one hand. I am dismissing the company's reversion claim. The temporary restriction on Ms. Reed's railway negotiations is lifted. Then she turned to Holly's complaint. The inspection found correctable issues, not grounds to remove Ms. Reed from the property. Code enforcement will monitor the repair schedule. The request to declare the depot uninhabitable is denied. Savannah held the edge of the table. And the trust? Miriam asked. The authenticated trust controls the beneficial interest. Savannah Reed is recognized as the sole current owner through Benson Freight Property Company, subject to ordinary filing updates. That was all. There was no applause. The room didn't change color. The papers simply said aloud what Robert had arranged years before. Savannah owned the depot. Outside the hearing room, Jeffrey left first. Holly followed without speaking. Todd remained near the courthouse steps. What happens to the yard? He asked Savannah. You can use the Western Drive for 90 days while we write a proper access agreement. You heard what I said about the loans. Yes. $18,000 a month could save the company. It belongs to the depot. So, that's it? No. Reed Freight Lines can bid on railway loads. I won't block you because of what happened here, but you don't control the siding and you don't enter the building without permission. Todd looked at Robert's freight map under his arm. You sound like him. Savannah didn't accept that as an apology. You knew I had nowhere to go. He lowered his eyes. I thought you'd take the motel money for a few nights. I didn't think you'd stay at the depot. That was the problem. Nobody asked what happened after Friday. Todd rubbed his thumb along the cardboard tube. I was trying to hold the company together. You tried to do it with something that wasn't yours. He nodded once. It was not forgiveness, but it was the first honest thing he had given her. I'll have the equipment list ready for the railway bid, he said. Send it to Aiden. Todd walked away carrying the map. 3 days later, Savannah signed the siding lease at the ticket counter. Aiden signed for Sonoran Southern. Sean signed a separate operating agreement, giving Barnett Hauling first consideration for local transfer work it could perform. Savannah added a defined access lane for Reed Freight Lines. It could compete for freight, but it could no longer treat the yard as its own. Ready? Aiden asked. Savannah looked at the brass key beside the papers. Yes. The first lease payment funded the permanent roof work. Savannah used part of the silver reserve for the tax balance, windows, plumbing, and the residential permit. She kept the collectible coins in the bank deposit box with Robert's letters. Work changed the depot room by room. Sean rebuilt the eastern edge of the platform with Savannah beside him. Curtis replaced the remaining old circuits. Olivia cleaned the ticket windows and complained about every person who set a drink near the historic documents. When the railway crew replaced the switch, Savannah stood in the yard while the first clean steel moved into place. Todd submitted a bid for 2 local routes. He won one. It didn't erase the company's debt, but it gave him enough steady work to negotiate with the lender. He sold unused equipment and stopped asking Savannah to rescue him. Holly did not visit the depot. Months later, she mailed Savannah a box containing Brianna's remaining photographs from the family house. There was no apology inside. Savannah sent a short message confirming the box arrived. That was the full extent of their relationship for a while. Jeffrey began driving railway transfers under Todd's contract. He followed Sean's yard rules because Sean removed anyone who didn't. Savannah spoke to him about schedules and nothing more. The waiting room became Savannah's home first. Then it became useful to other people. She kept a small kitchen behind the old freight office. The storage room became a bedroom, with a real door, a window, and a rug. Olivia insisted made the floor look warmer. One corner of the waiting room became a museum display. Robert's photograph stood behind glass beside the old sold sign image, a copy of the 1979 ledger page, and a short history of the depot. A framed local article hung beneath them. Its headline read, "Kicked out with only a freight key, she found the depot." It opened, "Homeless at 18, it became home." Savannah disliked the last 3 dots, but Olivia said newspapers had always been dramatic. On the morning the freight stop reopened, a Sonoran Southern engine pushed 3 cars onto the restored siding. Sean guided a flatbed toward the platform. Aiden checked his watch and called the first transfer on time. Todd's driver waited in the marked lane without blocking the gate. Savannah stood beneath the repair depot sign and listened to steel wheels settle on the track. The sound belonged there. That evening, after the last truck left, Sean carried 2 folding chairs into the waiting room. "You need anything?" he asked. Savannah looked around. The ticket counter had been refinished. Warm lights shone against the brick. Brianna's photograph stood on the office shelf. Robert's letter remained in the bank, but Savannah knew every line. "No," she said. "I'm good." Sean locked the yard gate behind him. Savannah turned off the museum lights and left one lamp burning beside her chair. If stories about young people rebuilding a life after family betrayal matter to you, subscribe and return for the next inheritance story. Later, rain began against the new roof. Savannah waited for the old drip into the metal bucket. It never came. She checked the windows, locked the platform door, and crossed the quiet waiting room. Beside the front entrance, she had mounted one of Robert's old wooden hooks. The tarnished brass key hung there in the warm light, beside the door of the depot she now called home.